Hello everyone and thank you for tuning in. This video is a recap of a well-received presentation video given by Michael and Garabandal. It was a very impressive and well-researched presentation which lasted over 2 hours. It was unplanned and contained many quotes from many sources. It was also recorded on my mobile at night, and the video was not to be the best to be seen, although what was said should have had all ears listening attentively. This video is a recap with a more aesthetically pleasing picture for all you viewers to enjoy watching while listening. I am going to do a quick fire round recapping the main points and events of Fatima and Garabandal. It will show what has occurred and what is still to occur. Here we go through Fatima, Garabandal. We're seeing Garabandal as the continuation of Fatima. We're going to use quotes from Padre Pio and other church figures, not only about Fatima, but linking it to Garabandal. We'll see therefore what is still the underlying current that may be contained in Our Lady's messages concerning Russia and communism, but all the more undercurrent lying there is about the apostasy within the church. And then in the end we'll conclude by any final commentary that may come off the cuff with remarks and taking in a lot more into account which I've read and what others have been saying. So without further ado, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share this on all social media platforms and reach as many people as possible, for the time is coming where many of these events are certainly going to be unfolding. So let's get started. Briefly, let's look at the beginning of Fatima, which was from May 13th, 1917 to October 13th, 1917, where Our Lady gave the three little children messages, and within these messages we've soon to have discovered there were three parts of a secret, and one part of that is best commonly known as the third secret of Fatima, which contained a vision, but this will unravel more as we go on. Here on the left we have the three children of Fatima, the eldest being Lucia on the far left, only aged 10 at the time. She grew up to be a Carmelite nun, which you can see at the bottom right hand corner, here speaking with John Paul II. And why did they have such a connection? Because above you'll see the photograph of where the Pope was shot on the anniversary of the first apparition of Fatima, May 13th, 1981. After he got well and better and opened up an investigation into everything regarding the letters previously written by Lucia some decades ago, it led to many which believed was the fulfillment of the Fatima prophecy. But Fatima and Garabandal is seen as the continuation of Fatima. As we've already said, May to October 1917 was the time of Fatima, which contained still at the time much mystery up until the time of the shooting of the Pope. Now, Pope John Paul II did eventually reveal what has been seen as the vision of Fatima written by Lucia, and he gave this publicly on the year 2000 in the Fatima Square amongst many of the faithful. But some still think that the texts, there are more than one text and we only have the vision, but not the words describing the vision, which we'll come to look at quickly. But look at the dates of Garabandal, 1961 to 1965. There's many changes in the world in the 60s. We should still focus on the events of the Church, which we know to be the Vatican Council, Second Vatican II. So let's look at the coinciding messages given by Garabandal to further understand Fatima and also understand where we're heading for this time in the world and of the Church. We must make many sacrifices, perform much penance, and visit the Blessed Sacrament frequently. But first we must lead good lives. If we do not, a chastisement will befall us. The cup is already filling up. If we do not change, a very great chastisement will come upon us. That was the first message, October 18th, 1961. The second message, a more severe message, getting to the point. As my message of October 18th has not been complied with and has not been made known to the world, I am advising you that this is the last one. Before, the cup was filling up, now it is flowing over. Many cardinals, many bishops, and many priests are on the road to perdition and are taking many souls with them. Less and less importance is being given to the Eucharist. You should turn the wrath of God away from yourselves by your efforts. If you ask forgiveness with sincere hearts, He will pardon you. I, your mother, through the intercession of St. Michael the Archangel, ask you to amend your lives. You are now receiving the last warnings. I love you very much and do not want your condemnation. Pray to us with sincerity and we will grant your requests. You should make more sacrifices. Think about the Passion of Jesus. June 18th, 1965. Wow. Many cardinals, many bishops, and many priests on the road to perdition and leading many souls with them. We will highlight the timing of these messages also in a few moments. But do you see all this linking to Fatima, of the vision, of the city half in ruins where the Pope was shot, many of the dead brethren on his way through the city? What about the angel with the fiery arrows? The fiery sword? What about the soldiers shooting the Pope with not just guns but arrows? What's the symbolism here? Are these events consequences that will happen, or is it more symbolism? Could perhaps this severe message of June 18th, 1965 reflect on that? Maybe this next man can help us a little bit more to understand, or at least to accept Garabandal. Saint Pio of Pietrelcina, best known as Padre Pio, the stigmatist, mystic, holy man. Here in the bottom right is an envelope where it was addressed to Garabandal. I believe it was to Conchita. And here we'll see the actual letter contained within that envelope. Here are the words St. Pio writes to the girls. My dear girls, at 9 o'clock in the morning, the Most Holy Virgin asked me to communicate to you the following. O blessed girls of San Sebastian de Garabandal, I promise that I will be with you until the end of the centuries, and you will be with me at the end of the world and after, together with me in the glory of paradise. I am sending this copy of the Holy Rosary of Fatima that Our Lady asked me to send you. The Rosary was composed by Our Lady and should be made known for the salvation of sinners and for the preservation of humanity from the terrible chastisements that the good God is threatening. I would advise you to pray and make others pray because the world is on the road to perdition. They don't believe in you or your conversations with the Lady in white now, but they will believe when it's too late. This is dated March 3rd, 1962. Already speaking about the road of perdition, which echoes the message of Fatima. We're already seeing a bridge linking the Rosary of Fatima with Garabandal, and here one of the greatest mystics of the Church in our times is writing directly to these little girls in the mountains of northern Spain. So let's look in at the point as why is Our Lady appearing in the 1960s? We have to go back a little further in time, between the 40s and the 50s especially, to understand, because Lucia, the little girl in 1917, grew up to be the nun. She went through the Dorothean sisters before eventually settling as a Carmelite nun. And here we have the point of June to September 1943, where Sister Lucia became very ill with influenza and pleurisy. The Bishop of Leiria, Fatima, Bishop Jose da Silva, feared that she would die and take the third secret to the grave. He suggested that she write it down and put it in a sealed envelope. But she replied that such an initiative would be too much for her, but if the bishop would take responsibility by formally commanding her, then she would willingly obey. And soon to follow, in mid-October of the same year, after 1 month of prayer and reflection, the bishop gives Lucia a formal written order to write down the third secret. Sister Lucia tries to obey immediately, but for the 2.5 months is mysteriously unable to commit to the third secret to paper. There's something worth highlighting here of the obedience and holiness that this visionary, with a clear relationship with the Mother of God and everything that's been put on her to be made known to the world, is struggling under obedience which she herself put before the bishop, asking him to order her. And yet she's struggling. Why? If Sister Lucia, who accepted the command of obedience to write down the third secret, was struggling for 2.5 months, we have to ask why. Why did she struggle? Surely the thought of the Pope being shot, as bad as that is, isn't a big enough reason to prevent her from writing it down. Only through the appearance of the Blessed Virgin was Lucia able to finally write it down, and this is where it occurred. January 2nd, 1944. The Virgin Mary appeared to Sister Lucia. Our Lady confirmed it was God's will to write the third part of the secret entrusted to her in Fatima, but the Virgin Mary asked Sister Lucia explicitly that the envelope containing the third secret of Fatima should only be opened in 1960 by the Cardinal Patriarch of Lisbon or by the Bishop of Leiria. Now, to ask again the question why it took her so much to the point it had to be through the intervention of Our Lady appearing to her, why was she struggling to write it down? This man gives us a little insight. This is Father Joachim Maria Alonso. He was an official archivist of Fatima with unrestricted access to Sister Lucia and her writings. How are we to understand Lucia's great difficulty in writing the final part of the secret when she has already written other things that were extremely difficult to put down? Had it been merely a matter of prophesying new and severe punishments, Sister Lucia would not have experienced difficulties so great that a special intervention from heaven was needed to overcome them. But if it were a matter of internal strife within the Church and of serious pastoral negligence on the part of high-ranking members of the hierarchy, we can understand how Lucia experienced a repugnance that was almost impossible to overcome by natural means. There's something keeping that theme of the hierarchy within the high-ranking members of the Church, internal strife, not just with what may have been happening politically behind the scenes with them to Lucia, or the trust of her to them by revealing this. This is a theme that keeps popping up as we go along. February 8th, 1960. As the world anxiously awaits the full revelation of the third secret, the Vatican issues an anonymous press release. Despite Our Lady's express order, the Vatican announces the following. It has just been stated in very reliable Vatican circles that it is most likely that the letter will never be opened in which Sister Lucia wrote down the words which Our Lady confided as a secret to the 3 little shepherds in the Cova d'Aria. By 1960, Sister Lucia is then placed under an order of complete silence and forbidden to speak about the third secret. Even her own confessor of many years, Father Jose da Silva Aparicio, is no longer allowed to speak with her. Whoa, talk about bringing down the power of the Church on her. So what happens therefore in 1960? The mandate of heaven for the Pope to release the writings of the third secret wasn't done. What happens? The apparitions in San Sebastian de Garabandal began in 1961. The Church had its chance to do it. It failed. A year later, Our Lady begins appearing to 4 little girls, again little children, in the mountains of Spain, the mountains of Cantabria. The year after that deadline given about the third secret of Fatima. So we've jumped from 1944 to 1960 as the world was finally awaiting it. And did the Church release it? No. And where are we speaking here about the words of Our Lady? We had the vision eventually, as we already know in this moment in time, but where are the words of Our Lady? We didn't get the words of Our Lady, we only got the vision described to us in writing. But why was it not done in 1960? This is where we're heading. Here on the left is a painting depicting most of the vision that the children had in Fatima. It began where they saw the angel with the fire and sword ready to set the world ablaze, but it was through Our Lady holding him back, and then he shouted, "Penance, penance, penance." They then took to see the man in white, who they assumed to be the Holy Father. Kind of wondering words about that. They took it to be the Holy Father, who was walking through the city half in ruins, and many of the faithful, laity, as well as hierarchy of the church, priests, bishops, cardinals, where many were martyred, and at the point of reaching the cross, where the angels were collecting the blood of the martyrs and blessing them, the soldiers shot him. But what's missing in this picture is the arrows as well. Arrows are always a sign of apostasy. The shield of faith, as Ephesians 6 would be, shield of faith protecting against the fiery arrows of Satan. There's so much symbolism in this, the more I speak about it actually. But physically, these things haven't occurred except for John Paul II being shot on the Fatima anniversary. That's it. I personally see the flaming sword as something to do with Akita, where it's fire from the sky, which would be a conclusion of the chastisement after a series of events. But we'll get more to that maybe later. But here we have, at the same time in the 60s, we already knew Vatican II Council was in its making and ready to roll out. So why did John the 23rd, who would have read the third secret texts, not do it at the most chance where he had with all the bishops of the world at the Vatican Council? They could easily have consecrated Russia, which was the express desire and order. All the bishops in union with the Pope to consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart. Here was the prime opportunity to do it. And was it done? No. And it's more likely as well at this point that he would have been aware of the events happening in Garabandal, because the opening of Vatican II was October 11th, 1962. She's already been appearing in Garabandal for at least a year, just over a year. And part of his opening speech at the opening of the Vatican II Council writes, "We feel that we must disagree with those prophets of doom who are always forecasting disaster as though the end of the world were at hand." End quote. Somehow he seems to have some sort of contempt for Garabandal and Fatima, if he is indeed aware of them all. We're not even bringing in the Night of Screams, where it speaks about great chastisement that the girls saw. The Night of Screams we're not going to get into too much, but for the whole village to witness these little girls in ecstasy, like they were many of times by now, to be screaming and shouting in fear, led the whole village with the priests and everyone of the church there getting to confession that night and the following time as well. And all we know about the chastisement is the only thing conditional about it is its severity. It will happen. It's definitely going to happen. It's not conditional where it will or not. It will happen. But the severity of it is based on our conversion back to God. But here we go on further now. We're going to look at quite a few quotes of different church officials here. The first one is March 17th, 1990. Cardinal Silvio Audi, who spoke with Sister Lucia in 1985, said, "The Blessed Virgin was alerting us against the apostasy in the Church. I would not be surprised if the third secret alluded to dark times for the Church, grave confusions and troubling apostasies within Catholicism itself. If we consider the grave crisis we have lived through since the Council, the signs that this prophecy has been fulfilled do not seem to be lacking." Now notice the date here. We're already speaking about in 1990. He spoke with Lucia in 1985, which is a year after the consecration of John Paul II of the world. I'll leave that thought with you. November 11th, 1990. The third secret of Fatima contains a sad prophecy about the Church, and for this reason Pope John the 23rd did not divulge it. In 1960, which is the year it should have been given, the Pope would have convoked a council from which, contrary to his intentions, there would arise many difficulties in the Church. So again, it's the point where did the Pope believe in 1960 that these things were pointing to the Council? His intentions and the Council's intentions were how to bring the Holy Spirit into the Church, how the Church for these times moving forward would be more fitting as we've seen progress since. But here we've had a radical warning from heaven itself through the Blessed Virgin Mary, containing in these texts given to a young girl of Fatima. And what are we speaking about here with apostasies? Are we speaking about, for example, no resurrection of Jesus Christ, that he's not truly present, body, blood, soul and divinity in the Eucharist? Are we speaking about hell doesn't exist? Jesus is not the Son of God? These are apostasies, rejection of the faith, the principles of the faith. And he's referring to these things coming to the church and what was already underlined regarding the third secret of Fatima. Here we're not talking about the Russia consecration. We're speaking about apostasy within the church, troubling times, confusion. And this is in the 1990s, long after it was apparent that some church officials, even says Lucia, said the consecration of Russia was accepted. Yeah, many good things have came with that, but what about the apostasy? It's an undercurrent theme that people seem to forget, I believe, the more I look into this. What do you think? Leave the comments below. Here again, 1995 in his biography, the prophecy of Fatima was completely defied. It is a lack of sense, I would say, because according to the interpretation that seems to be most worthy of consideration, the third secret, which John the 23rd and his successors thought inopportune to evil, regards revolution in the Catholic Church. From a council convened to throw light on the beauty and the profundity of the Christian mystery by presenting the Church as the spouse of Christ, so many innovations were born that they appeared to constitute a true eternal revolution. And I think that picks up or answers more or less what it says from the previous slide. The text of Fatima seemed to have been contrary to the intentions of the council at the time, and therefore it was defied. They did not follow the explicit order of the Queen of Heaven. So this is the point I was wanting to make. When you take into account the time of the council beginning, Our Lady begins appearing in Garabandal in between the mandate of 1960 and the beginning of the council. In 1961, where she appears in Garabandal many times, eventually those two public messages which were read previously were given. But one thing Michael highlighted on the presentation, which I thought was really quite cool. Usually things like this stand out to me. I don't think it's code breaking. I don't think there's much to find about it for now. But there's by no way it's chance that first message of Garabandal was given through these four innocent little children exactly 5 months and 21 days prior to the convocation of the Vatican II Council. And then the more severe message, the second message of Garabandal, where it speaks of many priests, bishops, cardinals on the road to perdition, leading many souls with them. Less and less reverence is given to the Eucharist. Have we noticed that since then, at least? I'm not blaming the Vatican II. Sometimes I feel, even as a seminarian, it's the scapegoat for these type of political useless arguments. But look again, 5 months, 20 days, that severe message was given prior to the closing of Vatican II. Something about a halfway point where these messages are given that just stands out. And I don't know about more than that to say about it, other than it's not by chance. We're talking about the visible institution of the Catholic Church. We're speaking about the episcopal institution, not the bride of Christ, not the mystical body of Christ, but the visible institution, as we see here in the photo representing that. This is where the alarm bells are. This is where the messages are focused on. The warnings are focused here. So again, sticking with the fact that what was happening in the 1960s, what was happening thereafter, here are the texts finally shown on video with Cardinal Bertone. We're speaking here of two different texts in sealed envelopes. Notice where it's in Portuguese, where it's speaking of Our Lady, underlined in red, where they're placed. And then the third line in near the centre, you've got 1960. What you'll find here now in the coming slides, the second envelope coming out the first, and the bottom one there. But look at the top where you'll see 1960 is in the third line at the left. and Our Lady underlined together at the top. And here they are both together, where you can see the differences yourself. And the words, by express order of Our Lady, this envelope can only be opened in 1960 by His Excellency the Cardinal Patriarch of Lisbon or His Excellency the Bishop of Leiria. This is what Our Lady did say to her in that apparition where she was struggling for 2.5 months to write it down. There is talk that it was back in August 1959, possibly August 15th that year, where the Pope and a few advisors round about him opened it at Castle Gandolfo. There's a ledger part, I think it was Father Malachi Martin, perhaps one of the witnesses at that event, where the Pope fainted after reading it. But a few other people who have read that Third Secret of Fatima have basically came out afterwards from the Church's official statements on it that there are more to it, and as we could see here, there are 2 texts, but we were only ever given the vision publicly in the year 2000 by John Paul II. Here's one man, and we're going to start seeing a series of men now, church officials, who are speaking more about the fact that there would be more than one text, there's more to it than what's been given, and the belief in Garabandal by some of them also. So why 2 envelopes? July 5th, 2006. During an interview, the personal secretary of Pope John XXIII, Archbishop Loris Capovilla, was asked if there are 2 texts of the Third Secret, and he gave his decisive answer. Exactly so. He confirmed there were 2 texts. Many cardinals that had real knowledge of the Third Secret spoke about it very soon before their deaths. Was it to unburden their consciences, perhaps? Some sort of dying declaration? Makes one wonder. But this is a man that was pointed out quite well in the presentation, a very holy, pious man, the Bishop of Fatima, one of the bishops of Fatima, here in July 21st, 1983, during an interview with Abbé Alfred Combe from France, Bishop, forgive me for the name spelling here, Bishop João Pereira Venancio, Bishop of Leiria, Fatima, declared, "This message given by the Most Holy Virgin in Garabandal is the same that she gave in Fatima, but it is updated for our time." Now this is a very holy pious bishop of Fatima who retired young at the age of 68 in good health. Why not at 75, which is the kind of the episcopal age of retirement for a bishop? Why did they retire so soon? Was he forced out? But then again, why would you look to him to be forced out? Well, he seems to be a type that would probably fit my own description. It was back when the Vatican, I think it was back in 1957, the Vatican requested that the Diocese of Fatima here, the parish of Fatima, the bishop would send all the texts, all the written texts that Lucia had already written down and was kept here with the Bishop of Fatima. The Vatican asked for it all over to them in 1957. So incidentally, in 1957, when the Vatican requested the Third Secret, this man here was the auxiliary bishop. He was beneath the ordinary bishop at the time, who said the Vatican wanted everything they have on Lucia. And his job here, Bishop Venancio, was basically to copy everything and send it over. Now, he wanted the ordinary bishop to open it up so they could make a copy and keep it for themselves. But the bishop wanted to follow in obedience not only to the Vatican, but also to the fact that it had only to be opened with certain individuals according to Lucia. And therefore, he kept in obedience to those requests and just sent it. But this bishop at the time, as auxiliary, when he was doing the photocopying, basically got a good look at what was contained in that envelope, putting it up to a great big white light in order to have a good amount of time reading it. And how does he describe it? He took the envelope, got a good look, and his description is basically saying a single sheet with 25 lines, margins were at least 3/4 centimetres on either side. That's a good description. How does he know the 25 lines? He must have been able to read it. But what happened with the Vatican released in June 26, 2000? There was a different account for the sheets and the lines and such and what was read out. So therefore there must have been two texts. And this man had knowledge of that based on what he probably read through the envelope, through the sealed envelope. And that man with that knowledge, what does he say? The Most Holy Virgin, the message given in Garabandal is the same that she gave in Fatima. He heard what was getting said in Garabandal with the knowledge he had about Fatima. And here he has another photo, not once but twice, making his own journey across the Atlantic to New York, where at this time Conchita's grew up, raising a family. This is the Bishop of Fatima. It could call for her to come over, but no, he goes to see her. A humble act and true sign of his belief both in Garabandal and Fatima. But let's move on. We recognise this great man, and there's so much we can make a talk on him alone, but let's keep to the journey where we're at here. November 11th, 1984. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger affirmed that the third secret concerns a radical call for conversion, the absolute importance of history, the dangers threatening the faith and the life of the Christian, and therefore of the world, and then the importance of the Novicini, which is the last events at the end of time. But the things contained in the third secret correspond to what has been announced in Scripture and are confirmed by many other Marian apparitions. Which apparitions are we speaking about? Quito, La Salette, Akita, even Garabandal. He would have been aware of all these ones happening, and it's best to note even later on in 1993, after a few bishops had passed through the Diocese of Santander, which Garabandal belongs to, you couldn't even call it a proper church investigation into the apparitions. But this man here, our good Pope Benedict XVI, at the time of being Cardinal, 1993, wiped the slate clean to begin it again, and that's where Garabandal remains open. I'd urge you to watch the recent documentary of this year, Unstoppable Waterfall. It goes into all this. It is amazing. But the Scripture, what else is it about the third secret that corresponds to what has been announced in Scripture as well as Marian apparition sites? Well, Lucia is on record as having said that if you want to know everything about Fatima, read the book of the Apocalypse, specifically between chapters 8 to 13. That's the book of Revelation. Now, the chapter 13 alone speaks about the rise of the Antichrist. There's times as Pope as well, people, because this man inherited the scandals as Pope, having to deal with it world over, on the world stage, news, civil law, canon law. He had to put things in place of the pressure of what exploded worldwide of church scandals, and he says it relates to the third secret of Fatima. We're speaking about the dragon and the tail wiping out a third of the stars, who basically are representing as the lights towards heaven, the consecrated souls. There's many times he speaks things like this in his interviews. It's worth to look up. But here we have, speaking about chapter 13, the rise of the Antichrist. Garabandal girls speak about the end of the times, and that's a common theme that we hear. End of the times, end of the centuries, these are the last times, whether it's from Garabandal or other noted apparition sites. And this is why I think he's bringing in the point of other Marian apparitions. Yeah, the private revelation, but if they are to be seen as true, then God's will is using his mother to use it as a compass and guide us to understanding the times where the scriptures still apply. And right now that's chapters 8 to 13 of the book of Revelation. And if you think of what he says in Fatima at his own homily as Pope in 2010, quote, "We would be mistaken to think that Fatima's prophetic mission is complete. May the 7 years which separate us from the centenary of the apparitions hasten the fulfillment of the prophecy of the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary to the glory of the Most Holy Trinity." And I ask, why did he not consecrate Russia himself? The possibility, or one possibility given back as an answer, He chose to act in a way of the knowledge he has based on reading the Third Secret of Fatima. The choices he has made are following the playbook Our Lady gave. He's read the Third Secret of Fatima. He knows all the stuff that's went on in the church that might still not have made the news. He's aware of everything. And could it have been in a wise decision, a hope that the hastening of the Immaculate Heart Triumphant will come quicker through his retirement? Did he in fact have a mystical experience, as some cardinals reported in Rome, during the time where I was seminarian? And then the night of his retirement, I was in Rome, studying as a seminarian, and I remember seeing the lightning bolt hitting in St. Peter's on the eve of his announcement of retirement. So many biblical little signs fitting, but there's so much more with this man. It would be worth a talk on its own for the times that we live in. But let's move on, keeping with to do with the Third Secret of Fatima. Notice these dates, some of them are back before, again, the shooting of John Paul II, and therefore before his consecration in 1984. But here we have Father Joachim Alonso. He's probably the foremost Fatima expert of the 20th century, and he had many interviews with Lucia. He says basically that Russia has not embraced the Catholic faith and thus cannot possibly be said to have been converted. And in 1976 he wrote, "We should affirm that Sister Lucia always thought that the conversion of Russia is not to be limited to the return of the Russian people to the the Russian people to the Orthodox Christian religions, rejecting the Marxist atheism of the Soviets, but rather it refers purely, plainly, and simply to the total, integral conversion of Russia to the one true Church of Christ, the Catholic Church." Now, a few years later, I should say probably closer to 8 years nearly, it wasn't done by Russia again. It was done with John Paul II with the world and not all the bishops. But then church officials a few years later speak like how Lucia did confirm it. If something's so important, why did it still take her a few years to confirm it? That's something worth asking or questioning. But it's not to put aside in one argument. I'm trying to remain objective because I see myself swaying back and forth. Was it consecrated? Was it not? But there are more things picking up here that even if it was done and accepted regarding Russia to convert, there's still many other factors coming into play for future events and chastisements, as well as the apostasy in the church. These things are still there which don't seem to fit in regarding that consecration regardless. Here is a great man. He's one of the most brilliant minds of the church. He was a papal theologian from Pope Pius XII to Pope John Paul II, and also a reader of the Third Secret of Fatima. Cardinal Luigi Chiappi, if I can remember my pronunciations. He wrote in 1995, "In the Third Secret it is foretold, among other things, that the great apostasy in the Church begins at the top." At the top. Are we talking Pope? Are we talking the top cardinals round the Pope? Think of the things that are going on with the Vatican Bank, the Cardinal Pell. We're thinking about other things coming out now with the McCarrick report. We're seeing bishops against bishops. We're seeing all sorts happening right now that even fits in with Akita, who Cardinal Ratzinger says was part of the Third Secret of Fatima also. Again, it all focuses more within the church. Don't need to keep looking at Russia here with other things going on within the church. That's what's standing out for me more and more. There's always been apostasies, but what is the great apostasy that begins at the top? And you're best to look back maybe to read 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, where St. Paul writes about the great rebellion, the great apostasy, the massive defection of believers out of the church. What's going to come to cause that? Here we have another reader of the Third Secret, a more famous voice, Father Malachi Martin. In May 4th, 1998, the Prophecy of Fatima is not a pleasant document to read, he says. It's not pleasant news. It implies It doesn't make any sense unless we accept that there will be, or that there is in progress, a wholesale apostasy amongst clerics and laity in the Catholic Church. That the institutional organisation of the Roman Catholic Church is totally disrupted. And number two, that it means intense suffering for believers. How's institutional organisation going on right now the world over in the year 2020? Yeah, from 1998 until now, there's been a lot of that happening. All sorts going on. Bit by bit, drip by drip. I'll say no more. But keep your mind alert, that's all I do. Here, look at the second date. Does that stand out for you? July 13th, 1998. He specifically picks this date to say what he's going to say, because this is July 13th, 1917, where the third secret of Fatima finds its roots. That's where Our Lady gave the message to the children. There was a second appearance of the Lady, this time in Spain, in Garabandal. The message was very dire. Repetition of the third secret in brief form. Brief form? Many priests, bishops and cardinals on the road to perdition, less and less reverence given to the Eucharist. Great chastisement will befall us if we don't change our ways. Here's another voice of the Church putting emphasis on Garabandal, along with Padre Pio and a couple other Church officials. Excuse me. Now this guy's got a few PhDs, he's bilingual with speaking many languages, and this came from an interview he spoke with Conchita. I think it was like the Archbell's programme or something it was said, if I picked that up right, and they both lived in New York. That's very strong emphasis. And here's another church official. He was the Bishop of Fatima between February 2nd, 93 to April 22nd, 2006. And living the life of a retired bishop, still in Fatima with his grand basilica and his prominent position in that shrine and the diocese. It was in March 8th, 2013, Bishop Emeritus of Leiria, Fatima, Bishop Serafim de Souza Ferreira e Silva, that's a big name, hope I've got that down right, he visited and celebrated Holy Mass in San Sebastian de Garabandal. That's not too long ago in 2013. Why again is it yet another Bishop of Fatima going to Garabandal? Why leave the Grand Basilica to go to the little Cantabrian mountains, to this little sleepy village, unbeknownst to many in the world, to celebrate Mass? So let's just kind of look at a bit with the consecration of Russia. Why again it may still be important for these times in the near future. August 1962, there was a Pact of Metz in France that was signed by Cardinal Eugene Tesserant, representing the Holy See, and also with the Metropolitan Nicodem, representing the Russian Orthodox. It's best to note that the Vatican-Moscow Agreement silences the Second Vatican Council regarding the evil of communism. The Vatican appears to have done the exact opposite of the mandate of heaven given by Our Lady on July 13th, 1917. So why did they make a deal with the Russian Orthodox? It's because Pope John the 23rd wanted the Russian Orthodox leaders at the Second Vatican Council, and they wanted it signed and declared that if we attend this, you will not be speaking against the evil of communism, which was very much prevalent in the Soviet Empire of the time. Politics before orders of the Queen of Heaven. And here we go again with Padre Pio and Conchita when she visited them. The great wonder of God, the great miracle, must be paid for with much blood throughout Europe. Why? There's a good thought at the point here to interject with, is what's going to happen, where it's been done or not. For everything that Michael says he's read on, and trust me, there's a lot more than what's coming from this presentation, there'll be a brief and horrible war with enormous loss of life. There'll be a great persecution in the Catholic Church. When that begins, they will release the rest of the Fatima secret, those 25 lines, the words of Our Lady. Not the vision, but the words of Our Lady that seems to be believed in the second text. Whatever's going to happen, it will be so bad that God himself will have to intervene to protect his church, his remnant, by a miraculous event seen by all, the illumination of conscience. Everyone, believer or non-believer, regardless of religion or none, the laity, the clergy, all the way to the Pope, every single human being will see the sins of commission and the sins of omission, the good that they failed to do, the bad that they did. And with that sin that they're seeing what they failed to do, which will be seen as the greatest omission of their own sin, they will see it as a failure of not consecrating Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The Pope and bishops will have this revealed to them during the miracle, and it will be number one on the to-do list. It will take very little cajoling on behalf of them all. They know they need to get it done. They'll be setting a date, and they will do it. Now, whether they all return to Rome to do it in union with the Pope at the exact same time with the same Mass, or every bishop from their chair of authority in union with the Pope in an official solemn way will consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. That is the key that unlocks the portal to God's mercy that he wanted to give us all this time. Now, he believes again, which sounds great, as soon as the last bishop does this solemn consecration, the miracle's instant. The permanent sign will appear as soon as it's done, and here the world is being converted as the miraculous sign appears. It's a good thought. It's just one. What's your thoughts? What do you think? Let's hear it below. So we're almost there. Here's another one coming for Professor Thomas Walsh, the Catholic historian, back in 1946. Sister Lucia made it plain that Our Lady did not ask for the consecration of the world to her Immaculate Heart. What she demanded specifically was the consecration of Russia. Sister Lucia stated more than once, and with deliberate emphasis, what Our Lady wants is that the Pope and all the bishops in the world shall consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart on one special day. If this is done, she will convert Russia and there will be peace. If it is not done, the errors of Russia will spread through every country in the world. Does this mean, in your opinion, that every country without exception will be overcome by communism? Yes, was her blunt answer. Okay, so that's 1946. Russia did spread their errors because the mandate in 1960 wasn't obeyed. The Pope eventually got shot on May 13th, 1981. He did the consecration of the world, not with all the bishops, in 1984. A few years later, church officials basically stated that Lucia says heaven accepted that. But yet more than once she stated years prior to it that this was the specific thing. Russia, Pope, all bishops on the one day consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart. And maybe it was accepted after so many attempts. And if anyone was fitting to do it, it would be John Paul II, surely, because he did fit part of that prophecy. But what about other parts of that prophecy? Even if it's symbolism of the third secret of Fatima image, if it was symbolic, then we're still speaking about the decaying corpses and those of the clergy dying. We're speaking about the apostasy shown there, city half in ruins, Antichrist rising, and the Vatican. I mean, what are we talking here? It all was done and dusted with the one man being shot on May 13th, 1981, and he does the Mass that was never fully done to the letter of the request. I don't know. I'm keeping my mind open to it because I see a lot of good did come after that consecration. The Soviet Empire crumbled, or began crumbling within the year or so. It's long gone. There's great Christian Orthodox rising within Russia. Are they Catholic? No. Good to become Catholic, maybe, with the events already explained that may happen. Yeah, possibly. Let's go on and look at the date here. Father Kramer, famous priest all would do with Fatima, some years ago wrote that these comments with regard to Antonio Ruffini. Now, Antonio Ruffini was a stigmatist, a holy man living a worthy life, and I believe it was Venerable Pope Pius XII that erected a church on the site where this man received the stigmata through the vision. It's worth reading into. But he says, Father Kramer says, I myself knew Ruffini for many years. In the early 1990s, Ruffini was asked point blank in his home, is John Paul II the Pope who is going to do the consecration of Russia? He answered, no, it's not John Paul. It will not be his immediate successor either, but the one after that. He is the one who will consecrate Russia. Now, there's quite a lot in this for me personally speaking. Now, if it's the early 90s, Ruffini's getting asked this and he says no, well, several years ago John Paul II did it in 1984, so why are they asking? But he says it's not John Paul and it's not his immediate successor either, who would have been Pope Benedict XVI, but the one after that. Are we speaking Pope Francis? Now, Pope Francis, the numbered Pope, when we get down to even the list of St. Malachy, of the numbered popes before the end times, we've reached it. And it basically speaks Petrus Romanus. He would be the one taking the flock in the church through great trials and hard times. Well, look at where we're at just now. But some are still getting the theory when it comes to these two popes, which fits in a lot to do with Anne Catherine Emmerich. But you need to watch my other videos on the playlist for her video alone when this all starts fitting in with more and more. It's either Pope Francis or the one right after him. That's where it's going to be. And we've already reached the 3 popes anyway of Garabandal, 3 more after John the 23rd. Some say it was 4, one would have a short reign. That still takes us to Benedict anyway. So regardless, we're in the 5th. It's done. And if you don't want to count Francis, we're still at the 4th. It's done. We're there. Look at the times. But here we are. So whatever's going to happen to make the next pope do it, whether it's Francis therefore, then let's basically see the fact that 2020 masses are closed all over the world. You're booking tickets to get in with numbers. Government are ruling it all with the fear factor. This year we're bringing in global reset. The Great Reset. That's just starting to trend now with all your world leaders, your Prince Charles and all sorts. What's happening in these coming 5 to 10 years? I'm telling you, this is where we really need to be alert here. You can't make this up. Here's the chief Vatican exorcist, Father Gabriel Amorth, who was interviewed by Zavala in 2011. This is a part of it. He's already spoke again about how he didn't believe it was done properly regarding the consecration in 1984, he himself standing an arm's length away from John Paul II during that Mass. Forgive me for insisting on the third secret of Fatima. Did Padre Pio relate it then to the loss of faith within the Church? Father Gabriel furrows his brow and sticks out his chin. He seems very affected. Indeed, he states, one day Padre Pio said to me very sorrowfully, you know, Gabriel, it is Satan who has been introduced into the bosom of the Church, and within a very short time will come to rule a false church. Oh my God, some kind of Antichrist? Where did he prophesy this to you? It must have been about 1960, since I was already a priest then. These points are highlighted for a reason. Was that why John the 23rd had such a panic about publishing the third secret of Fatima, so that the people wouldn't think that he was the anti-pope, or whatever it was? A slight but knowing smile curls the lips of Father Amorth. Did Padre Pio say anything else to you about future catastrophes? Earthquakes, floods, wars, epidemics, hunger? Did he allude to the same plagues prophesied in the Holy Scriptures? Nothing of that sort mattered to him, however terrifying they proved to be, except for the great apostasy within the Church. This was the issue that really tormented him and for which he prayed and offered a great part of his suffering crucified out of love. The third secret of Fatima? Exactly. There's that conversation. Again, great apostasy. What was it not done in 1960? Heavens gave us all these years and all the source to do it. False church. that should echo again with Anne Catherine Emmerich and many other Marian apparitions. Continuing on, is there any way to avoid something so terrible, Father Gabriel? He replies, there is hope, but it's useless if it's not accompanied by works. Let us begin by consecrating Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Let us recite the Holy Rosary. Let us all do prayer and penance. End quote. So again, this Vatican exorcist, thousands of exorcisms in all the years as a priest, and met Padre Pio on many occasions while he was alive, is still speaking in 2011 about consecrating Russia. Cardinal Sodano, the Secretary of State under John Paul II, back in 2000, before the actual text was made available at Fatima that year, Cardinal Sodano released an interpretation of the third secret before the official text was given. That's the first time any Vatican official has done that, or did do that. They want to say that the failed attempt of John Paul II's life is a description of the vision. And if you look closer and examine, look at the detail of the vision that I've already pointed out. You know, the Pope with halting step, the city in ruins, the corpses. What about the angel and the fire coming from heaven, which again was echoed in the 70s with Akita, Japan? Where's the arrows? There's so much more. Even if it's symbolism, it must be much more than a nutter shooting the Pope in 1981. Russia, communism, great apostasy are the main things to get highlighted, and here is a scanned document of the pages from the book Garabandal, which I picked up on pilgrimage this year in the village. It's a story of compelling events, far-reaching prophecies, and a message that must be heeded. It's a small handbook that basically puts it to the point. I'm not going into it all, but the points to highlight there at the top left are regarding the tribulation that's to come first. The outbreak of this tribulation will signal the beginning of the chain of events which will come in rapid succession, except for the last one. No one seems to fit, including Michael, where the chastisement fits in. But yeah, the tribulation will come, already explained as where it's bad for the church, bad for Europe, war, persecution, and then boom, in comes God to save the day with the illumination of conscience, the warning. But what else is going on with the tribulation? What's this relating to? We go on with the interviews. It's like basically when communism returns, Conchita says. When communism returns, this is in the early 1960s, it's still prevalent. Mario Loli seems to have been the first to speak about it when in 1967 she provided information to the Mexican priest Father Morelos. 3 years later, the same information as the possession of Maria Saraco had been written down and confirmed by Mario Loli with her own signature, and reads as follows. In spite of continuing to see the Virgin during the night of screams, we saw a great multitude of people who were suffering intensely and screaming in terror. The Blessed Virgin explained to us that this great tribulation, which was not even the chastisement, would come because a time would arrive when the church would appear to be on the point of perishing. It would pass through a terrible trial. We asked the Virgin what this great trial was called, and she told us it was communism. But isn't communism dead? At least Russian communism, since much of Asia is still red. Not according to Garabandal, since Conchita basically stated that communism would return. And further on, if we go down with Mario Loli's quote to another priest in 1978, Our Lady spoke several times about communism. I don't remember how many times, but she said that a time would come when it would seem that communism had mastered or engulfed the whole world. That should remind you of the Lucia comments about communism taking over the world. I think it was then that she told us that priests would have difficulty saying Mass around the world. Have we noticed that so far this year even? And also talking about God and divine things, priests would have difficulty about that. Our Lady said that priests would go into hiding, but I didn't see whether they were being killed or not. She didn't exactly say that they would be killed, but I'm sure they would be martyred. There's many things that go on with that. Mario Loli, again in other quotes, it's all related to communism and what's going to happen in the church and to the people, because all these things are to have repercussions among the people. When the church suffers confusion, the people are going to suffer too. Are we noticing that happening more? Some priests who are communists will create such confusion, that word again, that people will not know right from wrong. Anyone said recently that hell doesn't exist, or anyone recently in church approving any ideologies against Catholic teaching? When communism returns. So if these things weren't based on doing anything like consecrating Russia or that, these girls are saying these events are going to happen, which coincides with what your Vatican exorcist quoted Padre Pio saying, and also quoting other things from Padre Pio about the blood of Europe, speaking about the rise of the false church, speaking about communism, making it hard for Mass to be said. Even with, we call it pandemic, plandemic, whatever's going on right now, there's something becoming more clearer where evil's lurking out more and more behind out from the shadows, and I think it's more of an alert of what things are coming now. Whether it's fear factor, whether it's distorted compassion and all good intentions being put out in a positive psychological way for the masses, it's still the same evil behind a mask. That is the suspicion here, because these things must come to pass. We must use this as a reference to try and interpret these times. And let's look at Our Lady of Good Success, Quito. I've already done a full video. It's the first video on this playlist linking Quito through to Fatima. Here are just a few quotes. The devil will work to persecute the ministers of the Lord in every way, working with baneful cunning to destroy the spirit of their vocation and corrupting many. Those who will thus scandalize the Christian flock will bring upon all priests the hatred of bad Christians and the enemies of the one holy Roman Catholic and Apostolic Church. This apparent triumph of Satan will cause enormous suffering to the good pastors of the Church and to the supreme pastor and vicar of Christ on earth, who, a prisoner in the Vatican, will shed secret and bitter tears in the presence of God our Lord, asking for light, sanctity and perfection for all the clergy of the world, to whom he is King and Father. Now, as soon as you read prisoner in the Vatican, many do point to Benedict. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen if Francis is to be the Pope taking us through this, or his successor after. Hostilities in Europe aren't breaking out where any Pope in good standing, elected Pope, true Pope, would still be a prisoner in the Vatican because it's its own nation and right by law. So there's different interpretations. But Our Lady of Quito pointed from the middle of the 20th century onwards, so take that in mind. What was the middle of the 20th century and onwards? World War II, Vatican II Council, the mandate from heaven. It's all there. Unbridled passions will give way to a total corruption of customs because Satan will reign through the Masonic sects, targeting the children in particular to ensure general corruption. Unhappy the children of those times, seldom will they receive the sacraments of baptism and confirmation. As for the sacrament of penance, they will confess only while attending Catholic schools, while the devil will do his utmost to destroy by means of persons in authority. Have you noticed that even every handheld mobile device and tablet, the risk that children have to be seeing things they shouldn't be seeing, adult content, certain things challenging of the faith, of purity, pornography, all sorts, Masonic sects, the Freemasonry. Even if you look into the Golden Handbook of Fatima, shortly after that great miracle, the Masons themselves were trying to steal the tree that she appeared next to in Fatima, and all sorts of disruptions still went on after that miracle. Masonic sects, we keep hearing the Bilderberg Group, the Carlyle Group, the World Economic Forum, all these bigwigs and the power elites, the billionaires, all these things, and videos that are out there of who's married to who and who's connected to who, politically, matrimonial, familial, you name it. These are what are bringing things through using the mass media platform that we have. And even in my own country right now, where those persons in authority doing their utmost to destroy the youth. Why? Because the people, anyone under 18, I would say now, has only been born into a world where all these ideologies that are anti-God and that definitively are anti-Christian faith have been in the world. I'm 35 right now. First half of my life was the way things were. The second half of my life is where all these ideologies, political correctness and everything therefore have came into play. So those kids from 18 or under have no memory the way I have or where the elders have. And that is the difference. The youth right now will be the ones easily manipulated and led because it's all they've known, it's all they've grown up with, it's all they've been formated with. Even in Scotland, before COVID this year, apparently Scotland was going to legally recognise a third gender of non-binary. The school education system about the two penguins, two dads, putting it in where even the primary kids are getting sex education as well as this ideology stuff, and which is basically turning into pornography. I'm not even going to list the things that's came out in reports of what they want to teach your young children. Parents, stand up. Keto speaks about many not receiving the sacrament of extreme unction, the last rites. How many even in this year COVID patients didn't get this before they died? While the churches all remain closed. Where's the church's voice throughout this? Going with the flow. But yet some do stand up. I'll leave it there. And here we go in regarding that last question. Continuing with Keto, the secular clergy, that's your diocesan priesthood, will leave much to be desired because priests will become careless in their sacred duties. Lacking the divine compass, they will stray from the road traced by God for their priestly ministry, and they will become attached to wealth and riches, which they unduly strive to attain. How the Church will suffer during this dark night, lacking a prelate and a father to guide them. Many priests will lose their spirit, placing their souls in great danger. This will mark the arrival of my hour. I see 2020 as a time for everything to be tested and magnified. How are priests handling this situation? There is great despair. Who's in charge of the church? Government or bishops? Some priests appear to be trying harder than others. Are some enjoying the break off from the duties? There are so many stories I've heard people asking for confession, or you can't come into the house because of COVID, or priests going to priests, or you can't come into the house, or some are not even putting masses on until the whole thing lifts apparently. What's happening here, people? This magnifies where everyone is in their own care, their own duty or lack of within the diocesan church, the secular clergy. Wakey, wakey. And you know what this is all coming as a sign of? Let this quote answer it, perhaps. St. John Eudes, The Dignity and Qualities of a Holy Priest, chapter 11. The most evident mark of God's anger and the most terrible castigation he can inflict upon the world are manifested when he permits his people to fall into the hands of clerics who are priests more in name than in deed. Priests who practice the cruelty of ravening wolves rather than the charity and affection of devoted shepherds. Instead of nourishing those committed to their care, they rend and devour them brutally. Instead of leading their people to God, they drag Christian souls into hell in their train. Instead of being the salt of the earth and the light of the world, they are the innocuous poison and its murky darkness. St. Gregory the Great says that priests and pastors will stand condemned before God as the murderers of any souls lost through neglect or silence. Now that first big paragraph reminds me of my time in seminary. You know, God's anger is allowing the clerics and this ravenous wolves. You know, whining and dining in the church seemed to be a more matter of formation to make you sit as a pillar of the community, as the priest, the professional, fitting in with the mechanics of the church and its stance in society of the world, rather than being biblical like the apostles and the saints. I remember one priest, I'll forget being the next John Mary Vianney, just have compassion. And I remember turning away in my seat because it was side-on views, the way the altar was to my left. And I just turned round face centre. That's the way I interpreted what he was saying. All effects probably going from Vatican II, where the year after I think they lost 40,000 priests. And I've never been one side or the other side when it comes to liberty or liberals and trads and all this, because that is poison. It is the poison that destroys vocations, along with everything else. It's the sewage of hell, the whole lot. And that's why we can't allow ourselves to get it worried. But when it says they'll stand condemned before God as murderers of any souls lost through neglect or silence, have we noticed any neglect? Are we certainly noticing silence in these days? I'll leave that up for you to think about. But let's remember, it's God who judges, not us. We need to keep praying and praying and praying. This is where living the messages do count more than these things that are happening. We should not be pointing the finger at anyone, but we should be seeing our own. So in conclusion, therefore, what can we see in terms of what's happening here? We know the events that are to come. The war, the blood, the persecution in Europe especially, when Russia takes one last chance of world domination. We're speaking especially about the church apostasy that can't be taken away from any manner of consecration. There's more than just one thing that comes with Fatima and that third secret, that second text. And I believe it could be the church prudence and where that's being kept for a specific time to come. When that time does come, it'll fall quickly with the warning, which will eventually lead to the consecration and then the miracle prophesied at Garabandal. But yeah, I know like many of the others there, it's not just with Garabandal, but I'm going to follow on with a video after this where it can still fit in with other events. But yeah, we're in the time where we have the two popes, and it's so much suspense and thriller to keep us in suspense at the fact that the two popes come at the same time, the end of the Malachi list, which also come with the centenary of Fatima, which also seems to fit in with so many things of Anne Catherine Emmerich, especially what's going on within the church, the split in the church, the compromise, and as Padre Pio, the apostasy in the church. The world is too much in the world, and too much of the world is in the church. And I think with the church trying to fit in from anything from the ecumenical side of the Abu Dhabi agreements being the recent thing, to fitting in with the United Nations and diplomacy with the Holy See and all nations of the world. This year especially, not just with the coronavirus or with the climate change political agendas, to name a couple, but even in Time magazine speaking about the Great Reset and how even the United Nations are advertising that, you'll have nothing but you will be happy. The more you look into these so-called great intentions coming from your global elites and world leaders for an agenda by 2030 at least, they're using this as the great opportunity for that great reset where man's making himself more into God and how to go with the planet. There's too much into that, not want to go off topic, but this is my own personal commentary now about it. I see that world communism, every nation, Lucia, Garabandal, they're all saying it at the time of the apostasy. They're parallel in line with the church and the world of what's going on and where it's heading. But the church cannot accept every ideology that comes from this great reset and the world's moving. This is where it comes to the point of apostasy of the faith, I believe. We have to get back to being definitive. And is Jesus Christ the Son of God, second person of the Holy Trinity? Yes or no? Is he truly present, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist? Yes or no? Is it the true Church of God? Yes or no? If we noticed the recent synods, and again Garabandal speaks about how these things will come, coincide with a synod. The most recent synods we've had, the first one, Family Synod, there was attacks of matrimony, penance, and the Eucharist. The Youth Synod gave some sort of introduction of the Church to the LGBT ideology set in Affirmations. The Amazon Synod, the most recent one, Assault on the Priesthood. The Amazon Synod being the most scandalous, just happening last October 2019. And the first time since the 1970s, I believe, Sister Sasagawa, the Akita nun who prophesied about the great events of Akita, and Cardinal Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI, saying they relate to the third secret of Fatima. We're talking many bishops, many cardinals opposing one another. Satan would attack them, would get into the church, then fire from the sky in the end. I see that as the final chastisement, the great fire wiping out 2/3 of humanity. That's way down the end of the list, I think. But again, the guardian angel of Sister Sasagawa appeared to her days before the Amazon Synod last year, telling her to repent and pray for the church, even to put on sackcloth, which is taken straight from the Bible, with the story of God sparing Nineveh. And about 40 days later, after the Amazon Synod, where we saw them worshipping the false idol, the Pachamama, in the Vatican itself, with the hierarchy and the Pope. 40 days later, coronavirus breaks out. Some news channels have reported astronomical record-breaking numbers of locusts eating everything in sight throughout the continents. We're talking food shortage next year, not just as a result of that, but for other things going on with this economical and social nightmare of this pandemic. But yet, look at the thoughts where they want to take it, along with climate change, what's getting fed to us all the time in the social media platforms, on the news constantly. It really is the last decisive battle in its making, there's no doubts about it. And the last thing I'll leave you with here is a quote from John Paul II at the time it was Cardinal Karol Wojtyła, and a quote also from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 675. We are now standing in the face of the greatest historical confrontation humanity has ever experienced. I do not think that the wide circle of the American society or the whole wide circle of the Christian community realize this fully. We are now facing the final confrontation between the church and the anti-church, between the gospel and the anti-gospel, between Christ and the antichrist. The confrontation lies within the plans of divine providence. It is therefore in God's plan, and it must be a trial which the church must take up and face courageously. And it kind of echoes Lucia Fatima's last message about the last battle, the last decisive battle between the church and the anti-church, and it was over marriage and family. But have no fear, Our Lady's already crushed his head. That's more or less what she said, literally. And then here in the Catechism, to back all this up, before Christ's second coming, the church must pass through a final trial that will shake the faith of many believers. The persecution that accompanies her pilgrimage on earth will unveil the mystery of iniquity in the form of a religious deception, offering men an apparent solution to their problems at the price of apostasy from the truth. The supreme religious deception is that of the Antichrist, a pseudo-messianism by which man glorifies himself in place of God and of his Messiah come in the flesh. That fits in with the Great Reset. That's just my thought for the time being. But there's no doubt that the fact that heaven's prepared us for over a century, and even centuries before pointing to this century, such as Quito, Ecuador, take all of our accounts into play. Garabandal and Fatima are enough. Fatima's enough to keep an eye out for the times, but with many more that could be input into it. Heaven has given us more and more, enough time, enough warnings, and enough chances to change and avert our lives. And I pray that we all do it. So please like, share, subscribe, get this message out there. Leave the rest up to God to do His work. I always pray for that when I publish a video, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care. God bless.